Hey guys, today I'm going to talk to you about how to take your name and make that's in 1 point perspective and do the second part of the assignment, which is using your watercolors and making the different kinds of washes. Remember, in this assignment, you need to have 10 different kinds of washes. So I have my watercolors, I have my setup here, and I'm just going to go in order about what I need. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do my M, and that's going to be my wash. So I'm just going to kind of paint this with water. I'm only going to paint the area that I want to have a wash. Okay, so I'm just going to get this wet. Okay. And then, as it helps to have your brushes already out. I'm going to go in and get my water out. My brush. I'm just going to kind of fill that space and see how it kind of bleeds and it kind of goes. That's okay. And it really will only go with where you want your, where you have already painted your water. It shouldn't explode anywhere. So that's what you want to be really intentional about where you put your color. Okay. So I'm just going to lightly put that in. If you want, you can go back in and add a little bit more water to your area. Now, if you were to change your color, go to another color, or even just make it lighter and less paint, you could get something that they call a graded wash. But I'm just going to kind of keep it the same. And pull that in. Now, depending on the paper that you use, you might get some buckling for this. This is just an assignment just to see. I want you to practice all the different kinds of techniques. And if your brush has been old or used a lot, it might kind of open up and you might see more of the bristles with that. And there you go. So now you can see I have this wash level here. Okay, and now I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to go back in with the background color, and I'm going to do another wash for the M of a different value. But I'm going to let this front part of the M dry first and come back to it because I don't want it to bleed. Okay, so now I'm going to do the next part, which is called dry brush. This is another technique you can use. I'm going to use a different brush for that. Dry brush, really, you're going to do exactly what it's called. It's going to be called dry brush. So I might take a color that I think looks good with that. That would be next to it, which would be like a yellow. And I might get there a lot of paint in my palette. Okay, so I mix some water into my yellow, and I got a lot of water in there. Okay, I don't think you can see, but there's a lot of water right here in my yellow paint. Now I'm going to take an actual dry brush for the R. I'm going to dip it in my paint, okay? And I'm just going to kind of go in. So I have paint on my brush, but I have no water. I'm going to just kind of paint it. So you can use this dry brush technique, like if you're trying to get some shading in there. Sometimes you can use it for grass. Grass is a good one for dry brush because you can actually see the different bristles, and the bristles work really well for some kinds of shadows. So you can use a fan brush for dry brush. If you want to do like hair for an animal, and you can kind of fan out your brush and then kind of pull it up on your paper, and you really get this like bristle look, which can be kind of cool. Okay, so I'm going to do that for my R. And get in there, get some of that dry brush look. And trying to get so you can see the different techniques there. You can actually see those brush strokes in that. Okay. For the S, I decided to do wax resist. So if you can see, I've actually already kind of used some of a crayon. This is a twistable crayon. So I'm going to getting some wax on my page. And what's going to happen is wherever I put this wax, even if I chose like a blue, it would still make this resist wherever I have this wax. So you can, the neat thing when you do a wax resist, if you were using a wax resist, you could, the idea is the paint is going to escape where you have the wax. Okay, so let's say I go in there with the green and I use like a light green. So I'm gonna put some green on my palette, and I'm gonna water it down. Have it more of a yellow green. Wherever I paint, you can even paint over that crayon, and it's gonna resist where I have it, and it's not gonna paint on where I put the crayon. So that looks kind of cool, especially if you use white and you're doing like a sky or something like that, and you're doing like stars in the sky. So that's something you can think about. It's a technique artists use sometimes. This is also another technique that's called batik, where you actually use not crayons, but you actually use actual wax, and then you put it on, and then you put material, or a lot of times you use batik with a different kind of material that you could paint on canvas, and then you the material and put your paint over it, and then you can actually take the wax off, and then where you have wax, there's no paint, which is kind of cool. Okay, so the next technique that I'm going to be doing is called salting. And that works best if you use a dark color. So I'm going to use a real dark, maybe dark purplish blue for here. And I'm going to put a lot of color in there. You have to kind of go quick. So I'm trying to paint quickly, but yet effectively, so that you can see the technique, because if the paint dries, then you won't get the salt. The salt won't work. You are actually going to need salt right now to get this. Okay, so this one is salting. So I'm using sea salt. And you kind of have to have a lot of paint on it. If you look at the salt, now the salt is actually soaking up the paint. Okay, so I'm going to go in and make this part even darker. Now because I have wet paint right next to it, it's doing something called a bloom. and it's blooming in, which is not what I wanted to happen, but you can kind of see that. But the salt will actually absorb the paint, and over time, if you had enough paint on your paper, and then once it dries, it will have this really cool textured look. So that's kind of neat. Okay, so I'm going to move this salt out of the way. And the next technique is called sgraffito. And sgraffito is actually like drawing, only it's using like the back of your paintbrush or a pointed edge. So like I have this pointed edge that has drawing in it. So I might take my Y and get a really nice orangish red, I guess that might be even better, coralish stuff. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to paint my Y. Now remember, you're going to be doing this with your name, not with mine, obviously. And you are going to just be trying out whichever technique you want. You need to have, for this assignment, you need to have 10 techniques. And I'm showing you one letter at a time. Each letter needs to be a different technique that you use. And then the background can be whatever technique you want there as well. Now, when you're going to do your background colors, if you have your letters, and you should have your letters already made in 3-dimension, those letters themselves need to show space. So that means that that background, that the spatial part is actually going to be darker. If you see when I'm painting, I'm making this little bit of red, it's a tiny bit darker than the front part. Okay, see, I made that purple a little darker than the front. I'm going to make this part, once it dries, darker than the front part. That way it shows space, like that it's going back into space. So here I have put in my color. And I just painted it like normal. Now, see, I have a balloon. So I'm going to go in, and this is actually called lifting out, where you kind of try to get it so that it looks like it's you didn't make a mistake, but it actually did. And so if you're a really good artist, you can get it to work. But sgraffito is where you actually are drawing into it. You're drawing this design. And you can draw whatever kind of design you want. I'm just drawing random stuff, okay? But you have to do it while it's wet, because really it's etching into the paper. And if it's not wet, then it won't work, okay? It won't do it. So here I was doing and scratching into the paper. You use sgraffito a lot in clay when you're making something with clay, designs or whatever in actual clay. So if your painting dries too quick, then you can go back in and you can do really cool sgraffito design. Okay. Mine's not the best of a design, but you can make yours better. Okay, and then one of the next ones is called blot, and it's exactly just that. You're just going to blot it. Okay, so you're going to take it and let's find a color that I have here. Let's do this straight up blue, and you're going to paint it in there. And then you're going to take tissue or something. You're going to blot it. Pretty simple, huh? And you're going to take off some of the color. And you're going to be really intentional about where you blot it. Okay. All right. Right here, I'm going to get that shadow into that D to make it look more three-dimensional. And I'm going to go back in with that salt. Put some more of that salt on there to get some of that salt technique. And that salt is really going to soak up that color. But you have to be patient and let it dry. Okay, and the next technique I have for you is called It's called wet in wet. And this is where you wet your color, okay? You wet your page. It's almost like that wash that I did. Only you're gonna put in the wet with a lot of water into that. And you're just gonna let it bloom. And it's just gonna bloom where you have the water. So you have this wet and wet. And this is where you could do some really cool layering effect. Because you could get another color and you can go into it and see what happens. Let's get some colors in there. Okay. And then you could go in with another color. And what does it do? And see, it just kind of spreads because you have that water. It just goes where you have that water. Okay. So this is called wet in wet. And I'm going to take the water, I'm going to pull that water down. Get this. You want to be really careful because it's gonna go. It'll bloom. It'll explode and bloom. And so you can get some really cool colors this way, and you can make a big mess. And so you have to be really intentional about where you're going to put your color, what you're going to do with it, and you don't want it to go into your next area. So you're going to have to watch what you do with your paper. Okay. And so at this point, you would let it dry before you go into anything else, just like I let this side dry, okay? But you can get some kind of tie-dye effect look, which is kind of fun. Okay, so let's go back over here. Now we've let this dry. Go back in this area with this N, and so I'm going to add some more color here, and this is the wash technique. So I'm just going to go in this. Okay, so what I just did right there, I had a lot of paint, and I did something called lifting out, where I went back in and I took that paint and I lifted it out. Now I actually made a mistake, so I'm going to show you how to do that. You can use a bigger brush, or you can go in with a flat brush. kind of like these flat brushes better. You use a little bit of water and you go in and you kind of scrub it away. Okay, that technique is called lifting out. And you're gonna need to get pretty good at it, because if you make any kind of mistake, which you're human and you will, being able to lift out your watercolor mistake is really important. So you just plop that water until you get it so that it looks like you didn't make the mistake. And you're happy with what you got. Okay. That's called lifting out. Okay. Okay, so we have done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 kinds, and we need 2 more. So that's when we're going to use this background. And we can do something called we can do something with tape. Okay, so I'm taking this piece of painter's tape. You can use painter's tape, or you can use masking tape. That works either or. Painter's tape works really well in case you want, if you don't want it to leave a mark. And I'm just going to put some tape in. This is called masking out. Let's do it at the top. I'm going to put my tape down. And you don't have to put your tape in just a line across. You can mask out whatever you want to mask out. But basically the idea is you put some tape there, and then you find your color that you want. And let's say I wanted to do a graded wash. I would start with color, a little bit of water here. I'm going to put my wash in. And then I just kind of paint on top of my tape. Okay. And I'd even go down here underneath my tape. You can put whatever design you want. This thing. This is your project, your picture. I just want you to practice the different techniques using this 1-point perspective. So you're practicing drawing with 1-point perspective, and you're practicing the techniques. So be creative. And I'm getting this kind of background sky in there. Okay. Getting this wash, nice wash. Maybe I want to go back in and get some purple, and I'm going to drop in some color, because I think it's always kind of fun to have some like drops of color in there. And see how they're blooming. This is called water drops. You can incorporate that into your picture if you want. You can actually put in actual drops of water on top of that too, because that water is going to blend it and make some areas lighter and some areas darker, which is kind of cool. Now I'm going to make sure that this is actually going to change into a darker color down here. And I'm going to make sure that it's faded. And how you do that is by making sure you put some water in so that it kind of comes down and you don't have a nice line. And I'm kind of trying to lift out that line that I just almost got that I don't want. Okay. So I don't want any hard edges. So I'm going to give some more water in. Now this picture is hard because the actual paper is not exactly watercolor paper. It's pretty thick drawing paper, but it's not exactly watercolor paper. So it is crinkling. So that's okay. Kind of get some of it in. All right. So you can see how I have these watermarks in there, right? So this is kind of fun. I like this look. And then I'm going to kind of put this some more purple in and let it, man, this is like a big purple picture. But what if I added a little bit of red, like red violet in there too? So got some of that, some red in. That's going to do. Ooh, it's kind of like a tie-dye here. right? Let's get some of that red violet. Ooh, maybe that's a little overpowering. Probably should have lightened it up a little bit. Maybe I can do that with the water. Okay. Yeah, it's a little overpowering, so I might come in and take some paper towel, tissue. That's what I have. And dry it and blot it. But there's something else you can do. There's another technique I want to teach you. And I'll do that over here. That technique, see, I have kind of showed you some of these. Right, I put that purple in over here. Get some more blue in here. I'm gonna get this darker over here. Variation in color. You can actually go in and put alcohol in your picture. I don't have any rubbing alcohol with me. It's actually at school, so I can't do it, but you can actually put alcohol in watercolor and it does this really cool effect. So that could be something you could try. And something else that you can do that I will show you right now, as I get enough paint in here, kind of going a little nuts with this dark color. It's kind of fun. Is you can use plastic, like saran wrap. I don't have any saran wrap, so I'm using a bag. And you can kind of go in, you can blot it using the plastic and pull some of that look. And it really gives a kind of a really funky texture. It almost looks like tie-dye, which to me, I think works really cool. So that's something you can do as well. So here I've shown you lots and lots and lots and lots of different techniques that you can use. And then with obviously with the masking is once this is dry, then you're going to pull off that tape and you're going to have this straight up white line, right? And then you could go back in with another color if you want and paint that. But because the tape was there, then that area is masked off and it's clean. So that part will give you a really cool design as well. So there's some really, really fun things you can do with watercolor. And for this assignment, what I want you to do is I want you to practice them. All of the techniques, you just need 10 on your 1-point perspective name project. So once you do your name, then you can practice those techniques and then you take a picture of it and submit it. And then you can see everybody's different techniques. And we want to make sure you fill your page. So right now I still have some painting to do. I have this white spot down here and I don't want that. I want your page filled with colors. So once you fill your page with color and fill your page with the different techniques, then let that dry and then photograph it and then turn it in on Google Classroom. And then make sure you upload it also to your art books. Okay, great. I'm going to finish the thing and I hope you guys have a great day.